Hello everyone and welcome back to the Project Ascension Hub. I'm Halen and today we're going to continue the series for new players, but we're departing a bit from our linear playthrough from 1 to 60 and instead doing shorter videos with more focused topics for newer players or even experienced players. I'm still using the content from the character that we started, doing the Locust Ranger build, so it's applicable to anyone that's just starting out. But this way I can make videos that are on topics that you want to learn about, like things you're asking about in the comments, or current things going on in Ascension. So today we're going to talk about Season 9's Wildcard system a bit more, which is something we covered back in the first video. But more specifically, we're talking about the synergy role system that has been clarified and improved upon in Chapter 2 that just launched this weekend. If you didn't know, in this season, all the epic and legendary mystic enchants from previous Ascension seasons have been turned into individual abilities and talents that you get randomly, or you roll the dice of destiny to get. You get one every level for talents, and one every 2 levels for abilities while leveling. And throughout the leveling process or at level 60, you can choose to specifically reroll a talent or ability with a scroll of fortune. One type of scroll allows you to roll either a talent or ability, while the other only focuses on talents. There are also some other underlying features of the system that help make it feel less completely random or chaotic, which can be very frustrating for some, and actually why a lot of people have been displeased with this season. And that's something that the devs have made clear in their Chapter 2 changes, and that's being focused on right now. And another reason why a lot of people are returning back to the game. So first, let's talk about the bad luck protection. This is something that was improved before Chapter 2, but this protects you from seeing an ability that you have already rerolled for a certain number of rerolls. So with the release of Chapter 2, this is now up to 75 rolls for abilities and 300 rolls for talents. So if you reroll Arcane Shot, you won't see it again until you've rerolled abilities 75 more times. For talents that have multiple points, so that means if a talent is 1 of 3 or 2 of 3, if you reroll a talent that's at 2 of 3, you will not see either 1 or 2 of 3 for 300 rolls, but you can still get the 3 of 3 or the capstone version of that talent, which is good. So if you get a 5 of 5 talent that you definitely do not want to use in your build, that one roll will immediately eliminate all 4 of the other versions of that talent instead of you having to see them again or potentially see them 4 times in the next 300 rolls. Now let's talk about the synergy roles. All right, so here we are on the Chapter 2 full features overview on the Ascension website, and we're in the section of explaining wildcard synergy roles. So as we can see here, the synergy roles work at all levels. They never stop, and you can get synergy roles while leveling and even at the level cap. So this is something that you're going to keep in mind even when you're at level 60. Contrary to popular belief, synergy roles have always been in the game. And these occasional rolls are a wildcard mechanic that either upgrades one of your talents or picks one of your abilities and talents and gives you a synergistic talent or ability based on what was picked. These synergies are based on things that modify or affect a given ability or are modified by an existing talent. These are not curated builds made for you by developers. Anything and everything that relates to one another. So if this ability is affected by this talent or vice versa, it's in the pool. And if you want to see what's in those pools, you can go to the database. So if you go up here to database, let's just go with the example of Pyroblast. Go to the ability of Pyroblast, come down here to modified by, and here's all the things that modify Pyroblast. I guess something that is relevant that you might want to keep in mind is they go from abilities to talents and talents to abilities. They don't go from talents to talents. So when setting up your character or when thinking about I want to get a synergy roll or hopefully I get a synergy roll for this one thing, remember that you may or may not need a talent or an ability in order to make that happen. So for example, if you had Hot Streak but you didn't have anything that synergized with Hot Streak, you couldn't rely on that Hot Streak talent to then get you another fiery mage type talent. You would need to go get an ability as well. I think it's also good to note here that synergy roles within themselves also have bad luck protection. You will not see the same synergy roll for 25 future rolls. And of course, we'll talk about it in the Q&A, but every roll you make increases your chance to get a synergy roll until you get one. and then it starts over. So synergy rolls were always a thing, even though a lot of people didn't think they were. However, now they're going to be much more prevalent just throughout the game and even at max level. Another thing someone asked about is whether or not there's going to be a visual for whenever you get a synergy roll. And that's something I personally wish they would do. However, the dev said that's not something they're going to do or think about doing. They did talk about the mathematical guarantee of getting a synergy roll. So in that way, it works much like a pity system in other games. So after a certain number of rerolls, if you have not gotten a synergy roll, you will get one guaranteed eventually. They also asked about if synergy rolls can give you something that you do not have the ability to use. So, for example, can you see Pharaoh abilities if you don't have Pharaoh form? This is something that in the older systems, it did work that way. Like you couldn't get combo spenders or combo abilities for combo points if you didn't have a combo point generator. But now in the current season, you can get anything at any time. For synergy rolls, they are making it so that those are blocked off. So you cannot get certain things if you don't have a prerequisite ability or talent before that. So how do we leverage this system, now we know how it works, to get the build and the rolls that we want? First, we can strategize what we pick at level 1 and what we card before level 19. One other clarification that isn't really, it's not written down anywhere official, but I think the community has agreed and we all know that it definitely is a thing, is that there are different weights or potency of synergy rolls throughout the leveling process. So before level 20, the probability that abilities and talents are synergistic with what you already have is absolutely turned up to 11. The chance to get synergy rolls before level 60 is definitely also higher, but 1 through 19 is extremely potent. For example, on my Locust Ranger, not only did I hit a ton of hunter talents and abilities before level 19, like at an uncanny rate compared to what you would hit if you were, much higher level, but a lot of them were also the full point value for the talents, like 3 of 3 or 5 of 5. There's actually a prestige strategy where you turn on the 1x EXP challenge so that you can do as many quests as possible before level 19. And that means you will get more adventurers caches, which means you get more reroll scrolls. And that way you can, I believe when I did it, I got somewhere around 60. So I was able to have a lot of reroll opportunities to try and get those sub 20 talents and abilities without having to card them. And those card slots are, very valuable to guarantee what you get. Speaking of card slots, something else in Chapter 2 is that we not only get 2 additional card slots for both abilities and talents, but we can now slot cards at any time, including at level 60. So we don't have to set them up between levels 1 and 9. That means we can let RNGesus take the wheel while leveling and give us what abilities it will. Let synergy rolls do their thing whenever they have a higher probability of happening between 1 and 60. And we can do that in hopes of just getting it naturally, the ability or talent that we want. And then we leave our valuable limited card slots for the very end to get the stuff that we did not hit. Personally, I plan to do this the next time I prestige, and the only cards I will use are the key pieces of the build, and that's to reinforce the synergy roll system so that it kind of drives it and gives me the abilities or talents that I want. And that way I leave the card spots open for the abilities and talents that are a very high level or rarity, and which is very uncommon that I get it. But I'm still going to leave them open until I re-roll quite a few times. So let's say maybe at least 100 or a couple hundred re-rolls just to see what I have. And even then, I'll probably just card the ones that make sure that my build is playable. Your level 1 abilities, you might want to pick the more rare ones, but you also want to make sure that you're picking the abilities that give your character the identity or the scope for the synergy rolls. You want to make sure you're telling the game, like, look, I am going for a hunter build, or I'm going for a mage build. So you want to pick some that are there and it's obvious. Try to tell the game, and I don't think we'll ever know what exactly the formula is or what ones are tied to what. But the devs have said that any ability or talent, if it can synergize or use it, it's in the pool. It's possible. there may be another science, where people say, well, this ability has 15 talents or abilities overlapping with it, while this other one only has 5. You could min-max it down to that point. But in addition to making sure you're telling the game that you want these synergies, you also want to make sure that you are blocking or closing off other pathways for other abilities. So, for example, let's say that in my Locust Ranger build, I randomly rolled a heal or a Warlock Curse at level 12. I would actually want to use one of my few rerolls that I've probably gotten at that point to get rid of that ability, because that ability is the outlier. It is telling the system that I can use curses. So let's look for some talents that interact with curses. So I would want to get rid of that ability so that I am not essentially wasting those extremely potent synergy rolls between 12 and 19. Another thing, if you're going to use the strategy of naturally rolling a specific talent or ability, you'll want to look at the ability page or talent tree and make sure that ability or talent is something that you can roll below 20. Don't make the mistake thinking like, oh, I'll just leave this certain ability or talent to hopefully get it before level 20, but you can only roll it at level 60 or 54 or something like that. So I figured it would go without saying, but you never know. I've screwed up a lot of builds, forgot to card something, or didn't think about the, how things would roll at what level, and definitely had this happen to me. So make sure you look at the ability or talent. But if it is below level 20 or obtainable below level 20, then that seems like a very good one to go for and use the slow roll strategy, because that means the pool is smaller, in addition to having that increased synergy roll probability. Now, in general, just re-rolling and making builds, I've seen a lot of people in game chat and also on the channel, they've asked about what they should roll first or what they should re-roll. And I think the synergy and bad luck protection system sort of answers that question for us a bit. I believe that re-rolling the abilities that are far outside your build's direction or your build's identity are the first to go, and this is for a few reasons. One, you only have so many ability rerolls, while talent rerolls are more numerous. That doesn't mean to say that one's more valuable than the other. I'm just saying you have fewer of the one. So you can choose to use those scrolls for both abilities or talents. If you, say, have 80 talent and ability reroll scrolls, let's say you reroll all the abilities that you want and you're left with 30 scrolls. You only use 50. You now know that you can use those remaining 30 to throw at your talents, as opposed to doing talents first and then trying to think, well, should I use these for talent still, or how many do I need to keep for my abilities? If you roll your abilities first, that question is answered for you. Second, I think that getting your core abilities dialed in can help narrow the larger pool of talents for, say, the synergy reroll system. But this is very build dependent, as sometimes some abilities have more overlap with other talents than others. And this is the third reason. Sometimes you get a talent that isn't what you wanted or expected for your build, but it can still work and provide some benefit until you get the ones that you really want. Now we're on to our talents. It's the same logic as the abilities. You're going to roll off all the outliers, and then you start getting down to comparing the stats or the mechanics of each talent and seeing which one is best for your build. And one aspect of that is whether or not to keep certain talents that are one of however many, one of X. So if it's one of 5, whether or not you should keep those whenever you're only interested in the, say, 5 of 5 or the capstone version of that talent. Something we need to keep in mind is that with Chapter 2, the chances to roll an upgrade have been increased. Not to mention, synergy rolls can also be upgrades. And based on what I've seen in Discord and in the game, I can confirm that we are seeing upgrade rolls much more often. So that means we do want to keep the key talents, even if they are not the capstone or the full number of points of what you need for your build. And after that, from then on, all you're doing is rolling the least helpful talent or ability, or you're rolling the one that you can do without in order to get that next broken thing that will tip your build over the edge. But it's all RNG. At the end of the day, a lot of people may say it's 50-50. You either get it or you don't. But it's all about making decisions that put odds more in your favor and leave your build in the strongest state at any given time. Whether that means keeping the suboptimal and going for the upgrade, or putting it on the bad luck restricted list and going for another talent altogether. It's about looking at it holistically at your build, what it can do for you, and always rerolling the least beneficial at any given time. I appreciate all the new subscribers and supportive comments in the first couple of videos. Sorry for the long break, but here we are, chapter 2, motivated, ready to go. If you're still here and you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Also, sound off in the comments with any questions or future topics for videos you'd like to see. Thanks again for tuning into the Project Ascension Hub. I'm Halen, and I'll see you in the next one.